Hello and welcome. I am Mixelight and this is my channel. Before we get started, if you would please give this video a thumbs up, I would greatly appreciate it. If you would like to be subscribed, please do so. And if you'd like to be reminded when my content goes live, go ahead and click that bell. Let's get started, shall we? All right. Close your eyes. Lay your head back. And imagine this, a land, a beautiful land. It's bordered by the Bass Strait in Tasmania and New South Wales, the Tasman Sea. It's a large area of land with 91,761 square miles. It encompasses a range of climates and geographical features that stretch from its temperate coastal areas and central regions to the Victorian Alps and the semi-arid north. It is a region much loved by hunters and skiers, anglers, campers, bushwalkers. It's beautiful. The scenery ever changing. Now imagine that you're being stalked. That you know there's someone there. Because you look at the film on your camera and someone took a picture of you while you were asleep in your tent. Imagine that you wake up in the middle of the night and there's someone standing there staring at you. And this is what we're going to talk about today. The very strange mystery of the Australian Button Man and the Victorian Alpine Park disappearances. It's not unusual for people to get lost in Victoria's remote and rugged high country, but it is strange for them to remain missing after weeks of fruitless searching. Even more strange that between early 2019 and 2020, 4 people disappeared within a 37-mile radius, leaving police and locals baffled. Some now suspect dark forces, including a strange bushman called the Button Man. Whether the Button Man is involved, or another serial killer, or something altogether more frightening, remains unclear. Whatever the cause of the mystery, Onondaga Valley in Victoria has become a dark tourism attraction. It is a spot where campers sit around a fire in the dead of night and scare each other with stories of ghosts, murders, and unexplained disappearances. The Onondaga Valley lies in the dense bushland between the popular ski resorts of Mount Buller and Mount Hotham, and you can only access the valley with a 4-wheel drive, and in the winter, the roads are completely closed. It is easy in this beautiful land, the Australian terrain, to forget that this can swallow you up if you're unprepared or if you're unfortunate. In recent years, there have been experienced hunters, well-equipped bushwalkers, campers, and day trippers who have disappeared without a trace, often in completely unexplained and mysterious circumstances. It is entirely possible that people who become lost or disoriented or unwell can die in the Victorian high country, their bodies never recovered. However, when the number of cases grows without any obvious reason in such a small geographical area, there will be talk of ominous factors, even if it's not based on any hard evidence. Locals in the area speculate about a regular visitor who disappears into the mountains for months at a time, known as Buttons, or the Button Man. He is a hard, expert bushman who earned his nickname from his habit of using deer antlers to make buttons and to create large plugs for his ear piercings. It is said that he camps on the side of a remote mountain so that he can see anyone approaching, that he uses snares to catch deer, and hunts with expertly crafted indigenous-style spears, which have been being used by the Aborigines for generations. Many campers and hunters have stories of the Button Man approaching them at their campsites once it gets dark. He creeps up on them like a ghost. He is known to be around 70 years of age, with short gray hair. He wears dark jackets, and those he encounters call him Bloody Scary. Others say he is spooky, but only a few report any actual threats or violence. He will question visitors on why they are there in his vicinity, but he rarely responds to questions about himself. They say he moves through the toughest terrain with the competence and stamina of someone half his age. At least 8 experienced bushmen have had encounters, with one saying he had 1,000-meter stare that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. They say no one knows he is near until he decides to make himself known. Disturbingly, a wildlife photographer spent days taking shots in the area near the Button Man's camp. When the man returned home and downloaded his photos onto his computer, there was one unexplained shot. This was the shot of the photographer asleep inside of his own tent. No one knows who took that photo. For reasons known only to himself, the Button Man builds rock pyramids in random spots and places piles of pebbles on the roads to know if a car has passed. Those spending time in the Australian bush, called bushies, have hidden firewood supplies in crevices but returned and found their stash gone. They say that someone had to have been watching them carefully to know the locations. An experienced hunter woke around 11 p.m. for a night hunt, and he found the Button Man camped next to him. Some think that he sees it as a harmless sport to hunt the hunters. He's proving to them that he can approach the best without them knowing. Police from the Missing Persons Squad have heard these stories too, which is why search and rescue police hiked into a remote area near King Billy Track to locate the Button Man at his base, perched high on a point in the Alpine National Park. Eventually, the man who prefers his own company decided that he would talk. Police were not there to accuse him of anything other than camping illegally, but they were there to seek his help because he knows the area as well as anyone and sometimes observes hikers, silently watching them pass. Meanwhile, there are sporadic sightings of the Button Man wandering into the nearby town of Mansfield to buy supplies or in the bush. He is a unique character who is extremely resourceful, slightly possessive of the area he sees as his patch, and usually only seen when he wants to be seen. But that will not stop others from wandering where the button man has hard intentions. And some say that he has been involved with some of the weird disappearances in the Victorian high country. Our first case is Russell Hill, who was 74 years old, and Carol Clay, who was 73 years old. They disappeared on March 20th, 2020 from their campsite on Dry River Trek, Onondaga. On this trip, Russell drove into the valley on a rough four-wheel drive path known as the Zika Spur Track, a road that he'd actually built decades earlier while he was working as a logger. Russell picked Carol up from her home in Pakenham on the outskirts of Melbourne on March 19th. My family and I happened to be traveling that same day. And the pair headed east, bound for the remote Onondaga Valley. Russell's family, including his wife, thought he was camping alone. Friends say since Russell's retirement 2 years earlier, he'd been known to head off on solo road trips. It was only when his disappearance happened that those close to him learned that Carol, a former Country Women's Association president, was on those getaways. The pair has not been heard from since March 20th, when Hill made a radio contact from a remote station in the Alps. During the call, Russell said that he was having radio transmission issues. Robbie Ashland, who was a longtime friend of Russell, was the last person known to have spoken to him. They were part of an amateur radio club that would chat on their radios each day at 6 p.m. The group is made up of men who like camping, hunting, and fishing, outdoors types, who use the radio to communicate when they are out of phone reception. When Russell hadn't called into the radio club on the 21st, they weren't too concerned. But when he hadn't, by the 23rd, Robbie reported him missing to the authorities. On March 27th, the couple's campsite was discovered. It had been burned to the ground, and his specially made and equipped Toyota camper utility was left scorched by the fire and abandoned. Hill's drone was also missing and has never been recovered. Despite it being burnt, the vehicle was still able to be driven. Russell and Carol had full and happy lives at their respective homes and showed no indication of wanting to disappear. Police checks showed that they have not accessed their phones, their credit cards, or their bank accounts. Despite repeated searches by the authorities, no evidence of their fate has been found. But they are presumed dead. If they hadn't set up their own disappearance and were the victims of an accident, then how did their campsite, set up for comfort with a tent and an outdoor shower, fold-up chairs, and a table, just happen to catch fire? Hill was in the area a week before the couple vanished, flying his drone near the Button Man's campsite. Did his activity somehow cause him to take action? Ashland says that it was on the King Billy track in 2019 that Russell and another friend had encountered the Button Man. Robbie said the strange man was agitated, and he let them know that he didn't want them to be camping there. In May 2020, police searched the area where Russell Hill and Carol Clay were last seen in a final effort before the snow fell. And they found nothing. Police were asked if the pair, who have reportedly known each other for more than 20 years, could have run away together, but this was considered highly unlikely. These are two people who were very close with their families, had good, independent, comfortable lives. Our next case would be Niles Becker, On October 24th, 2019, Niles Becker, who was 39 years old and an experienced bushwalker, went missing on a solo 5-day hike in Victoria's Alpine National Park, which he had prepared for months. Police said Mr. Becker was well equipped for the hike and familiar with the area. He left the Upper Jameson hut on October 24th, and 2 days later he sent a message to his family from the Vallejo Gantner hut that he was heading to his car at Mount Sterling, which was roughly 6 or 7 hours away depending on the route. The last confirmed sighting of him was by the Button Man himself. He told police that he saw him in his area. The track took him past the Button Man's camp. This is not surprising, as his camp is a spot known as the Crossroads, where bushwalkers in the know head because it is one of the few places with good radio reception. Police used over 70 people to search for Niles, but with no luck. Senior Sergeant Keegan said police had a few theories about what might have happened to Becker. There were some very cold nights. Hypothermia may have kicked in, but he may very well have walked out of that search area, or perhaps foul play or something more mysterious was involved. Our next case is Conrad Whitlock. No one really knows why Conrad Whitlock, who was 72 years old, drove into the high country in July 2019. Nor do they know why he left his white BMW in the darkness on the side of Mount Buller Road, along with his jacket, his cell phone, and his keys. Conrad, who was from Sandhurst, south of Melbourne, was last seen by his wife as they climbed into bed at about 11:30 p.m. the night before. She awoke at 5:30 a.m. to find him gone. He failed to arrive for work the next day, which raised concerns about his whereabouts. Victorian Police Inspector David Brown said that officers found the car in working condition and with Whitlock's jacket, cell phone, car keys inside. At the moment, there is nothing to indicate a reason for the vehicle to have stopped. The vehicle had the keys with it. It started. It had fuel. So as to why Mr. Whitlock has gone away from the vehicle, at this stage we simply don't know, Inspector Brown said. He had been suffering from unexplained headaches, but if he had had a medical episode, surely he would have finished his drive. It was only a few meters down the road that he would have been stopping. Or if it was some suicide, then wouldn't he have left a note for his family? One theory is that he left his warm car to maybe stop to go to the bathroom, which also seems like an odd thing considering he wasn't that far away from his stop, and decided that he didn't need to take a jacket for such a quick break. But what happened to him next? We don't know. There hasn't been a trace of him since that day. Next, David Prideaux. He was 50 years old. He was a former Barwon prison governor. He was a passionate bush hunter, and on June 5th, 2011, he went deer hunting with his brother-in-law in Victoria's Alpine National Park. He has never been seen again. Despite several searches of the area, months after his disappearance, there was never any trace of Prideaux or any of his belongings. There were many theories about what could have happened, including the fact that perhaps he was killed over the murder of drug dealer Carl Williams, who had been ambushed and murdered inside Barwon more than a year before David disappeared. But it was thought unlikely that a hitman would creep up on an experienced hunter. Media reports raised the possibility that Prideaux had been in possession of sensitive police files, including allegations of police corruption, when he went missing. The coroner ruled out suggestions that David faked his own death after a number of reported sightings over the years, including in the Western Australia town of Broome. The inquest into his death, Heard's investigators, had meticulously combed over Prideaux's bank accounts, but they had not been touched since he vanished. Similar searches of his mobile phone records, as well as his Centrelink, Medicare, Australian Post, and betting agencies, had also failed to trace a link. The coroner found it likely that Prideaux died from a serious accident in the national park or a medical cause, and there was nothing to suggest that he met with foul play. The coroner is satisfied that he is dead, but the case is unknown, and it seems very odd to me that the coroner would be so certain of a man's death when he has seen no evidence whatsoever of what happened to that man. He hasn't even seen the man's body, let alone have anything to base his findings on. That's very strange for me and seems a little convenient. But that's just me. Finally, Warren Meyer. Warren Meyer was 57 when he disappeared from Dom Dom Saddle, Fernishaw, on March 23, 2008. For Meyer, who was an experienced bushwalker, the 4-hour Easter Sunday hike was easy. The weather was great. He was equipped with a phone, a GPS. He had food. He had water. Yet, he has never been heard from again. Warren had set out from his home at 7:45 a.m. and arranged to meet his wife and some friends for lunch. He failed to show, and his car was found parked and locked in the Dom Dom Saddle car park later that afternoon. Meyer ran a successful civil engineering consultancy business in Elwood, and he had been planning for his retirement. There were reports of semi-automatic gunfire heard in the area on the morning that Warren went missing, and that a large marijuana crop was found during the search for him. And an escaped involuntary psychiatric patient with homicidal thoughts was found roaming near the track where Meyer had been walking. Despite being investigated by local police, the Missing Persons Unit, and the Homicide Squad, no trace of Meyer has ever been found. Despite the attention the disappearance garnered, the case went cold, and in December of 2017, Coroner John Ohl concluded that Mr. Meyer had died of unknown causes and that no further investigation was required. It's unfortunate that these national park cases, and this isn't even in the United States, are so often dismissed as natural causes or animal attacks or hypothermia. Thank you for coming to my channel. Again, if you would like to, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you'd like to be subscribed and you're not, please do so. And if you'd like to be notified when my content goes live, go ahead and click that bell. Down below there will be a link to a fundraiser that we're doing so that Rob and I can go explore the New England area and see all of the haunted places. We're going to take one for the team. We're going to get it on film. We're going to see which one of us gets scared. And I have new merchandise below. It's Christmas time. Well, it is in my house anyway. It's close enough. Good night.